Welcome to Sanctuary, bringing you conversation and stories at the intersection of life and faith. This edition of Sanctuary is produced in cooperation with the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago.
Chicago is home to some outstanding universities. The thousands of students who study here come from around the world and reflect the religious diversity of our country. Hello, I'm Nisan Chavkin, Executive Director of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago. And today we'll hear from adults who are working hard to meet the spiritual needs of students on our area campuses. Joining me today are Chaplain Tahera Ahmad, Associate Chaplain and Director of Interfaith Engagement at Northwestern University, Rabbi Levin Rosen, Executive Director of the University of Chicago Hillel, and Ms. Amanda Thompson, Director of Catholic Campus Ministry at DePaul University. Welcome to Sanctuary.
Thank you.
And to begin, I would ask just if you could tell us about what it is you do and the organization where you work and what is the mission? What are you doing on our local college campuses? Tahera, could you start?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you. Wow, you have a great accent.
That's all I know. So
Perfected that.
Well, greetings of peace to you all. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Tahera Ahmad, and I'm an Associate Chaplain and Director of Interfaith Engagement at Northwestern University. We have 3 campuses. One is in Evanston, one is in downtown Chicago, and the third is actually in Doha, Qatar. So
wow.
That's actually kind of unique.
Okay.
Our office, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, really works to find meaning and purpose for students. Actually, we don't find the meaning and purpose. We encourage the journey in which students embark upon during college, and it's a time in their lives where they're already experiencing so many unique aspects of who they are vis-a-vis their peers as well. And so our really presence is one of the ministry of presence. It's to help them through the difficult challenges that they go through. Sometimes it's crisis related, but really we're there to be present through the different questions that they may have throughout their life experience in college. And religion, part of it is ritual, so there's that theological underpinning that we are present for. But we're also there for the spiritual aspects that they may have questions around overall meaning and presence of why are they here? What is their purpose in life? And so our presence is there to help them guide through the more difficult challenges of life as well as the questions that they may be asking around meaning and purpose.
Cool. And you're an employee of the university?
Yes.
Okay, and it's a private university, right? It's not affiliated, or is it affiliated with any particular religious tradition?
Northwestern is a private secular institution.
University. And yet here you are a chaplain.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Rabbi Anna, what is your circumstance?
So I have the opportunity to be the executive director of the Hillel at University of Chicago. And Hillel's mission is both religious and transcends kind of religion per se. We strive to help meet the needs of Jewish students regardless of how they express their Judaism. There are many students who understand themselves to be deeply religious, and our way of service for them is to help meet their needs in terms of kosher food and religious practice, and be a site for celebration and companionship and daily prayer. In fact, prayer 3 times a day happens at our building. But for most of the Jewish students on our campus, we operate more as a community center. Many Jewish students will identify themselves as cultural Jews, and the work that we do is help them to understand more deeply and in a more adult context what that can mean for them both while they're on campus, but also help them create an enduring commitment to holding value to that Jewish identity for the rest of their lives.
And what is Hillel? Because you're not a staff member of the University of Chicago faculty.
No,
right?
I'm not.
Okay, so how are you related to the campus?
So Hillel is a national organization. There are chapters on most large college campuses, and we see ourselves as a campus partner, and we're part of the Religious Life Council. But we are a separate organization funded separately.
Got it. Amanda? Wow.
Sure.
You're at DePaul, which is a Catholic institution, right?
Yeah, we are a Catholic Vincentian urban institution, largely commuter population, about 2,000 live on campus. And we're under the Division of Mission and Ministry. About 12 years ago, we were university ministry, and there was a decision made to switch, to change and restructure, to have Catholic campus ministry, Vincentian service and formation, and then religious diversity. So those three offices are under the Division of Mission and Ministry. And part of that was so that other students who are not Catholic at a Catholic university would feel comfortable to be able to touch into the Vincentian mission of the school, which is rooted in Catholicism, but also open and broader to all. So in that way, we have students who are Muslim, Jewish, Protestant, and nuns who can join into the Vincentian mission, which is deeply rooted in care for the poor and the marginalized. So in my area, Catholic campus ministry, our goal is basically, Catholicism is a big tent. So people come to us on all different areas of the spectrum of being Catholic. So some of them come in our doors wanting just to learn a little bit more about what it means to be Catholic. They're not so sure. They weren't raised Catholic, so they're checking it out. Others are on the other opposite end of the spectrum. They have been involved in their youth ministries. They went to Catholic high schools, and they are raring and ready to go, ready to lead. And then you have the middle bunch who are interested in learning more. They do want to pursue their faith, but they're not quite sure where they're at. So our goal is really to create a space, like you said, meaning and purpose is really important at this age and stage of their lives, but also a sense of belonging. I think particularly this generation wants a sense of belonging. They want to feel like they're being heard, their voices are being heard, and they want to figure out what they believe aside from maybe what they grew up with or what their parents had instilled in them too. They may want to follow that path or explore other paths. So they want safe spaces to be able to do that in. And that's what I feel that we provide at DePaul.
And how long have you been at DePaul?
4.5 years.
And both of you, have you been long tenured, or how long have you been in your jobs?
Well, I often share with my students that I'm a super duper senior.
Please explain, because you don't look like you have a social security card. Just
Right.
You mean something else.
Well, senior year, I've been there for 10 years.
Okay. Cool.
I've also been at University of Chicago for 10 years.
Okay. And how did you find your ways to these places? I mean, it's when you fill out your vocational aptitude test in high school, was this something you always wanted to do, to be a chaplain on a university campus?
So I'm going to be very transparent and honest. I come from an Indian ethnic background, and so both of my parents wanted for me to become a doctor or an engineer or a pharmacist. So I, pursued undergrad in biochemistry and also attended a religious institution, a seminary, during my undergrad. And part of the reason was because 9/11 occurred in my senior year of high school. And that had a huge impact on me personally, but also I felt this great need to understand my religious tradition, and then having it have to explain that to other people. It's when I talk about this, it's hard to express, the depth of what that was like as a Muslim, as a female growing up during a time when there were a lot of questions and also a lot of stereotypes and assumptions. So part of it was a personal journey and wanting to learn more about the tradition of Islam for my own self, the role of a woman, the rights of a Muslim woman, because I was often asked about that. And then particularly around female spiritual leadership. So when I would travel the Muslim world, I would see that Muslim women are in many different, occupations, and particularly in spiritual leadership, whereas in the United States, I felt there was a vacuum of that. And then also, I didn't really have a lot of role models that I could look up to during the college experience. So the chaplaincy, particularly at a college or university campus, was something that I felt was part of a calling, so that I may be able to be present for students when they are going through some of the challenges that I went through. And we know that, we live in a time where, regardless of where you stand in terms of the political, situation, having someone that you can feel a sense of belonging with, who can have that shared experience, and also really be present for you through those challenges, I think is something that really resonated with me. And so my father, who's a doctor now, a physician, he's very proud now.
No.
He tells all of his, physician friends that my daughter is a chaplain at Northwestern.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it had to do with my own journey of discovery and my relationship with God and serving humanity. And it also had to do with being present for young people who are going through challenges during, times where they may be stereotyped or may be questioned for their faith identity.
And you also went through some training, Rabbi Anna. Was this what they painted on the wall of the seminary saying, please become a chaplain? What was it?
Well, I actually started college pre-med. And I was a math and science nerd, I will say, in high school, mostly science. And I loved the idea of combining a thirst for knowledge and a deep curiosity and kind of an addiction to learning with a deep sense of being present with humanity. And so I think my desire to be a doctor really was answered much better by my desire to be a rabbi, especially for the opportunity to be present in people's lives, both when they know that they need it and also when they don't know that they need it. There were many adults who were deeply present for me when I was in college and helped me through a journey of discovering how faith and the meaning that can be found within Jewish tradition can really help define a life well lived. And with a sense of profound gratitude, I decided after rabbinical school that I'd spend a few years while I was still young serving college students. And
Here you are.
And here I am. And actually I now find, as a mother of three, I now find that my work serves students, but also there's a profound service for parents who are caring deeply about their students' journey and long to know that there's an adult present caring for their student who allows that student to be seen and known and heard and cared for by another present adult in their lives.
Okay. No, it makes sense. Amanda?
So I feel like I was formed and shaped by my mom and her faith as she was growing in her own Catholic faith. She was passing it on to me viscerally, because she would come home and be on fire with joy and love from these retreats that she was doing at her own Catholic parish. And then the Jesuits took over in my formation with my undergrad and my own campus ministry experiences through retreats and service, taking me abroad to Mexico and encountering the poor. And there my heart was just broken open to feel the love of others, to be filled with the love of Jesus Christ as well. And my relationship with Jesus continued to grow and develop. So I was elementary ed as undergrad, and then I went and did Jesuit Volunteer Corps for a year and taught, where I was in a relationship with a nun who was just fantastic, put me in ministerial roles that I never thought that I could do. So empowering me as a woman of faith, and that led me to do an internship at Loyola University, where I worked in 5 years in campus ministry there. Then I took 11 years off to have a daycare in my home, raising my own family, and then coming back, and I was working for the Archdiocese. And then, God just has these paths that are never straight and always surprising and exciting. So here I am working with the college students again, and just loving accompanying them on
Great.
this journey.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we have much more to discuss, and we will do so after we take a short break.
Thank you.
Metropolitan Chicago is one of the most religiously diverse areas in the world, and for more than a half century, Sanctuary has reported and reflected on our faith-filled community. Sanctuary tells stories of faith from both inside our houses of worship to the streets and neighborhoods where faith is acted out every day with acts of kindness and concern. From food pantries to peace initiatives, from worship services to servicing the poor, Sanctuary has a proud history of reporting on the goodness that flows from our faith traditions. Watch Sanctuary every Sunday at 12 noon on the Live Well Network.
Welcome back to Sanctuary. I'm Nisan Chavkin, Executive Director of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago, and I'm here today with Chaplain Tahera Ahmad, Associate Chaplain and Director of Interfaith Engagement at Northwestern University, Rabbi Levin Rosen, Executive Director of the University of Chicago Hillel, and Ms. Amanda Thompson, Director of Catholic Campus Ministry at DePaul University. And so we've been talking about faith on campus and how you all got there and what it is that your organizations do and the roles you play, which are profound for students on campus. And I guess I'd like to continue our conversation by asking, where do you see students expressing themselves in terms of their faith traditions, their faith commitments? Is it some generations are more about broad social movements, some of them are about self-actualization, some are more turned in towards their respective communities, some are turned out to working with other communities. What do you see on your campuses? And I don't know, whoever wishes to start.
I think on DePaul's campus, we found sort of a bend towards a more traditional religion, religious practices. So maybe a little bit of a backlash after Vatican II and a time when the focus was really on the love of God and not really on doctrine. And so that wave kind of has ended, and now a lot of students that are coming in, we find them wanting to explore the more traditional ways of expressing their faith through worship and prayer too. So we have that, and then we also have the social justice minded, the more accepting of the LGBTQA community, with Pope Francis particularly leading the way to that. So we have this mesh of a lot of different places that students are, and ones who are not growing up practicing too. 20% of families go to church on Sundays in a Catholic parish, which is pretty small. And I feel like those numbers may be dwindling at times, particularly as we are closing and consolidating parishes. So there's just a wide range, and that's why it's really important for us to have not just interfaith and interreligious dialogue, but dialogue within our own tradition, right? Because it can become, in a society that's so polarized right now politically, we're finding that even religion can be so polarizing within our own Catholic communities. So it's really important for us to provide a space where all are welcome, where they're comfortable expressing their own religious traditions and ways of worshiping, but also dialoguing around that.
Often with other Catholics.
Cool. Yes, yeah.
Cool. We never have these problems in the Jewish community.
No, yeah, no, not at all.
So I actually was looking to comment that that one of the focuses that that our senior student leadership now are building is a conversation around pluralism, and one of the components of campus life that I find to be the most compelling is the great diversity that's present. Students from the broadest spectrum of Jewish background, from students who didn't know that they had a Jewish relative who, disclosed on her deathbed that she was Jewish and wanted her grandchildren to discover their Judaism, all the way to, students who had grown up through day school and gap year in Israel. The richness and the opportunity for exchange and mutual learning beyond tolerance and even just beyond pluralism, but really to a point of discovering components of the wisdoms of Judaism that are present within all of the different families and the different backgrounds. In many ways, there's a unique benefit that can happen in a space that's as diverse as the University of Chicago Hillel, and we're really looking to help students and really to be present while students create a mutual exchange and see that Shabbat dinner can have students from all backgrounds kind of together, talking, singing, learning songs from each other, and in many opportunities, finding the right kind of way for themselves to be present within the Jewish community. And that's best done when seeing the broadest spectrum of
and in this safe space that you've created in this welcoming environment where all are welcome at Hillel.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that we've found is that it's not the professional staff that can provide that. It really is the opportunity for peers to hear and see each other, and to respect each other that creates that space of warmth and mutual understanding. And we really do encourage students to hear each other. And we say, stay who you are, if that's who you are, but hear the other people and love them and cherish their wisdoms as well.
One of the unique aspects of what's happening at Northwestern is that we embarked 3 years ago on developing an interfaith strategic plan.
Really?
And so we worked with several partners, including the IFYC. I'm sure you've learned of Ibu Patel,
yes.
The founder and executive director, and
the Interfaith Youth Corps for
the
our
Interfaith
listeners.
Youth Corps, and they're doing some incredible work on
stuff.
college campuses.
Right.
So I want to give them a shout out, of course. But we developed a strategic plan. And really, we looked at Diana X from Harvard, her study, the Harry Research Project, the Higher Education Research Institute, and their study. And what we developed was this idea that information doesn't necessarily change attitude. Relationships change people. So part of what we do is a dialogue series. It's a free dinner and dialogue series where students weekly come into a space from various backgrounds, and they have an opportunity to really talk about the spectrum that you talked about of their faith identity, and be able to share in a safe but also a brave space. And so this allows for them to engage with their peers, because you're right, I do think so much of their learning experience is vis-a-vis their peers. And having leadership, so we would be that, that area of, and I think it's awesome that we're all women, spiritual leadership.
Yes.
And so having the spiritual leaders, be the exemplars, I think is unique in that dialogue. But being able to have those kinds of spaces to build those relationships. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a place just for falafel and hummus and everyone's going to get along on everything. It's often a space where they learn to disagree, but they also learn that perhaps the truth of the other is something that is, they embody their truth, right? And it's that it's okay to know that story holds truth as well. So it's the idea of building relationships. So that's something that we've been working on at Northwestern. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that many of the minority groups on campus or campuses across the country have the opportunity of learning more about their own faith, and some of it is cultural, but some of it is also theological. So this idea that, the Pew report that came out that 1 in 5 Americans is now a nun, N-O-N-E, not a habit wearing that. The nuns, first you have to understand that report, while it suggests that church membership is decreasing, it doesn't mean that Americans are no longer,
people.
Right, and that they're not thinking about, spirituality and meaning and purpose of life. So we often find that many of our Muslim students, for example, when they come to college, it's their first time for some of them to really experience what does it mean to be a person of faith, a Muslim practicing Islam in 21st century in the United States. So I find that college is a unique space for our students to be able to build the relationships that they need to in order to, once they graduate, they're going to interface with a global community. And so having those skills of being able to build competency, community, and collaboration, the model for our strategic plan, is something that we're really proud of, and we're working diligently, I think, to build capacity for our students. And then secondly, I think it's important to note that the intersection of spirituality and social justice is something that students are really interested in, and networking with each other to help with initiatives, whether it's climate change, whether it's making sure that there's housing right here in Chicago. So there's those are, I think, efforts that they are embarking upon. And then I think the last thing I want to say, which is really significant, is the mental health piece. I think many of our students find a sense of spiritual wellness and mindfulness through religious tradition. And so I think it's important that chaplains and ministers, rabbis, are present in their lives to help through a process of healing.
Well, I beyond the connection between students and other students, one of the projects that University of Chicago Hillel is working on is building a relationship with the Bright Star Church in Bronzeville. Pastor Harris. There's an opportunity for students when they come to college to either define themselves as citizens of the space in which they dwell, or as temporary dwellers in a bubble in this space. And I think both Jewish text and Jewish tradition and Jewish history say that wherever we find ourselves, we have an obligation, both to the community directly surrounding us, but the broader community as well. And we've been finding some real purpose and meaning both for the staff and for students in building those broader relationships and seeing the experience and the justice of those in the communities surrounding the college campus to be our obligation.
Great.
Yeah,
and
Amanda,
I'm going to have to give you the last word here.
Oh, sure. No, creating spaces for students to interact, interreligious, interfaith students, and we follow the 1991 document on dialogue and proclamation about the ways of dialoguing. So the dialogue of life. So offering opportunities for students of different faiths to come together and socialize with one another. Hospitality, the dialogue of action. Very social justice oriented students that we all have now for climate justice and all of that. So opportunities for them to go on service trips together. And that's where the relationship building happens, or community service out into the broader city as well.
Thank you. And I'm a terrible person here to stop this conversation, but the show has to end, so we'll continue going forward. Thank you so much to our guests. That we had a tremendous discussion, which should continue much further. I want to thank Chaplain Tahera Ahmad from Northwestern University, Rabbi Levin Rosen from the University of Chicago, and Ms. Amanda Thompson from DePaul University. I'm Nisan Chavkin, and thank you for watching Sanctuary.
Thank you.
Nisan.